The epidemic is bringing China to its knees. And it spreads along the supply chains. In Europe, the most affected will be Germany and Italy. The coronavirus is way more grave than they make it seem. Millions of Chinese are stuck in cities in complete lockdown. By now, it is spreading across the States and Europe. There are cases in France, Spain, and the UK coming in. It is spreading in the USA as well. Amazon and others have pulled their attendance from the big event in Barcelona. The hotels are empty. Airlines are canceling flights en masse. The Chinese GDP will contract by more than 5% in the first quarter of 2020. Its tourist industry has collapsed. Tourism is 10% of Chinese GDP. 60 million people will not be visiting China this year. The global supply chain has collapsed. Delivery of consumption goods, etc. to the world and USA is cratering. China is disintegrating. The virus is bad enough, but the economy is shutting down. We won't be able to get the things we need to survive. For instance, America grows a lot of food as long as there is chemical fertilizer. The unfortunate thing is that we don't make fertilizer here, or at least not enough to support our population. The whole planet is going to shut down due to the virus, or as a ripple effect of other countries shutting down due to the virus. Meanwhile, most stocks are hovering around their all-time highs. Remember that after the SARS breakout, we went down to -40% in some sectors. And SARS was nothing compared to this one. It seems simplistic to think that China can register a positive growth rate this year. Just the loss of 3 weeks in total would be enough to wipe out 6% of Chinese GDP this year. Too pessimistic? If anyone thinks that China will return to work soon as if nothing had happened, he deludes himself big time. All this reminds me of 1929 all over again. Only the star of the show has been replaced. In 1929, the USA was the world's cheapest producer of goods and agriculture. Totally first in the mechanization of production, i.e., railroads, tractor combines, auto assembly. And a new way to play the market. Then it broke. China produces but kept 1800 sanitation and food supply, their downfall. But will it spread? 400 million people quarantined, and the second largest economy grinds to a halt. It's like a thermonuclear weapon hits China. The blame lies with primarily Bill Clinton. He gave China most favored nation trade status. That cooked our goose because China cheats like it's no one's business. For a starter, we must bring back our pharmaceutical industry from China. They are going the way of a big civil war. Welcome to the Atlantis Report. The broad policy direction for many of the world's central banks and governments now hinges on one question: how will the Chinese government respond to the economic shock caused by the coronavirus? The impact of the current coronavirus epidemic has already been felt in the automotive sector, which represents the heart of industrial manufacturing not only in China but, for example, also in Germany. Automotive plants throughout China have been ordered by the Beijing government to remain closed after the Lunar New Year holidays. Volkswagen, FCA, Toyota, Daimler, General Motors, Renault, Honda, and Hyundai have stopped production in what is the world's largest automotive market. According to S&P analysts, auto production in China dropped by 15% in the first quarter of 2020 compared to the same period in 2019. But the repercussions go back along the entire supply chain. FCA has announced that one of its European plants may have to stop production in 2 to 4 weeks due to supply problems from 4 Chinese suppliers due to the blockage caused by the epidemic, and that it is looking for alternative solutions to avoid this situation. In the last few days, the same fate had happened in Hyundai for its plants in South Korea, while Volvo had to change the supplier of batteries for hybrid vehicles in order not to stop production due to the stop of imports from China. And not only. The global supply lines that are in crisis due to the stop caused by the epidemic to their Chinese suppliers are not limited to the auto sector. Qualcomm, the world's largest smartphone chip maker, warned that the epidemic was causing significant uncertainty about smartphone demand and supplies. Luxury goods producers are also under fire. The British brand Burberry has closed 24 of its 64 stores in mainland China. At least 60 airlines have reduced or stopped flights to and from China. Australia's tourism industry is losing an estimated $1 billion a month from the Chinese tourist ban. China is Australia's #1 tourism market, delivering 1.4 million visitors a year and contributing about $12 billion annually to the economy. Mohammed El-Arian, chief economist of Allianz, told CNN Business that the potential cascading economic effects are extremely worrying. They first paralyzed the region of the virus epidemic, said El-Arian, so they gradually spread to the national level, undermining internal trade, consumption, production, and the movement of people. If the process spread further, even on a continental and international level, trade, supply chains, and tourism would stop. Asian central banks cut rates. In response to the crisis, the People's Bank of China cut the base interest rate and injected huge amounts of liquidity into the markets to help reduce pressure on banks and borrowers. The Beijing government also announced new tax breaks and subsidies to support internal consumption. The central banks of Sri Lanka, Malaysia, Thailand, and the Philippines have also cut interest rates in recent weeks, while South Korea and Taiwan may follow shortly. The problem, however, is that since 2014 the European Central Bank has already had negative rates, a situation similar to that of the Bank of Japan, while the U.S. Federal Reserve has already cut interest rates 3 times last year and is closely monitoring the situation. It is unlikely that a response to the global crisis triggered by the Chinese epidemic could instead come from fiscal stimuli in the The epidemic is bringing China to its knees. And it spreads along the supply chains. In Europe, the most affected will be Germany and Italy. The coronavirus is way more grave than they make it seem. Millions of Chinese are stuck in cities in complete lockdown. By now, it is spreading across the states in Europe. There are cases in France, Spain, and the UK coming in. It is spreading in the USA as well. Amazon and others have pulled their attendance from the big event in Barcelona. The hotels are empty. Airlines are canceling flights en masse. The Chinese GDP will contract by more than 5% in the first quarter of 2020.